Right, explanation texts are quite tricky, especially what we are asking you to do. So the end task we have set is why were the D-Day landings successful. We have talked about that maybe at home, that might be something that you are struggling to do, so you might just want to explain the D-Day landings. However, my class, Oak class, have worked hard this morning thinking about why they were successful, haven't you? So we're going to see if we can help the guys at home, aren't we, with our ideas. But one of the hardest things to do is thinking about how you're going to set out and tips for using explanation text. So I found a PowerPoint and we'll use this. So tips for writing, explanations. We're one of those ones that takes about 30 clicks, isn't it? Come on. Purpose tells us how something works or gives us information. So what are we giving information about? Think your audience. You are the author, you are the writer. Think who your reader is. Hand up, yeah?
Year 5, 6 and older.
What are we giving information about something?
D-Day.
D-Day landings. We're going to really try hard to give information about why they were successful. If you're struggling with that, you might just want to write about what D-Day landings were and how the process of them, how they worked. But we're going to aim to try and tell people why they were successful. Structure. Now, what you'll notice is, on the plan, I've done loads of paragraphs, haven't I? Maybe too many. We don't have to use necessarily all the ones in the middle, but it might be that you want to break it down into more pieces. Explanation text isn't like a non-chronological report or something a bit more meaty. The paragraphs are smaller. You don't have quite so much in each paragraph because you're trying to think about the water cycle. You don't write very much, but you have to separate it by paragraphs for each process, don't you? So you'd start with maybe the precipitation, the rain falling down, then you would move on to the next stage. So you don't write much in each paragraph, but you separate them because they're each a different stage. That's the same for D-Day landings. Each paragraph might be smaller because it's one individual point at a time. A general statement is used to introduce, so we're going to think about our introduction today, aren't we? Introduce the topic of explanation. So there are lots of things we can do to stay healthy and keep illnesses away. So that's it's not a massive introduction, is it? It's not like other types of writing where you need a really long introduction. It's a really brief introduction into what you're going to be talking about. So be having to think about that. So why the D-Day landings are successful. There are lots of reasons the D-Day landings were successful, which we are going to talk about here, or there are lots of ways. I'm not sure that was the best example, was that there are lots of reasons the D-Day landings were successful. I think we can keep that in our head, but we're going to build on that when we get to the end. A series of logical steps explaining how or why something occurs. That's your paragraphs in the middle, yeah? The steps, why or how. So why were they successful? You've thought of about 5 different things, haven't you? Which we'll have a look at in a minute. About 5 different things. Oh, I think I missed a bit at the bottom. Steps continue until the final state is produced or the explanation is complete. That's why you've got so many paragraph gaps. I'd rather you had more and crossed out the ones you didn't need and not enough, and you felt you had to squash things together. Features. Now we've gone through these. Now one of these isn't correct because the first one, explanations are normally written in the present tense because you're explaining something that happens on a regular basis, maybe like volcanoes exploding, like the water cycle, those things you're explaining the process that happens, yes? Like if you're explaining the school day, it happens, doesn't it? So it's present tense. We are explaining a historical event. World War II is historical, isn't it? It happened in the past. Therefore, we can use the past tense. Okay, so that's something worth remembering, that normally they're in the present tense, but we're going to use the past tense. Conjunctions, we talked about time adverbials, didn't we, in time connective yesterday, Miss Baxter, and explanations are written using causal connectives, or as we like to call them, casual. They're all a bit chilled. No, they're not. They're causal, they're causes, because so. And we've done those in a previous lesson as well. There are other features. Here we go. title explains what the text is about. We've got our title, haven't we? Opening statement, that's your introduction. What about subject? Clear, simple points about how or why. This isn't a wordy, a fluffy wuffy, lots of adjectives. You know, the cute brown ships carried the tall, dark soldiers over the stormy hills, stormy waves of the beautiful English Channel. That's not what we're writing, is it? We're not writing. It's got to be much more factual and to the point. Okay, we don't need all those superfluous adjectives to make it sound lovely. It's just to the point. How and why it occurs. Technical words. There's lots of technical words. World War II, isn't there? Lots of technical words. Conjunctions we know about. Present tense we've talked. We're going to do past tense and a summary paragraph, which we call a conclusion. Well done. You know all this stuff. Title and introduction. This is where we're going to be focusing on that today. Decide whether to use diagrams, charts, illustrations or flowcharts. When are we going to do that? Are we going to do that now? We're going to do that at the end, once we've done our text. Use a clear title to indicate what you are writing about. Do we know our title? Why were the D-Day landings successful? It's short, it's succinct, it's what we're writing about. If you're just going to write about the D-Day landings, you would change your title to reflect that. Using how or why in title helps. We've got why, haven't we? If you were just going to do D-Day landings, you might change your titles to how the D-Day landings worked or why the D-Day landings happened. Use first paragraph to introduce, we know that. Subject to the reader. Try to make the title intrigue the reader. Why does sloths hang about? Ours is quite intriguing, isn't it? Why were the D-Day landings successful? That would draw the reader in. Why does sloths hang about? Ours is quite a serious topic. If you do, something a bit more fun. Right, we're going to skip through these because we are going to be thinking about our title. So this just quickly do the ending bit. Reread the explanation, pretending that you know nothing about the subject. Does it make sense? Finish by drawing all the ideas together in a concluding paragraph. That's often the bit we struggle with, isn't it, the conclusion? Relate the ending to the reader, so talking directly to your reader. If specialised terminology is used, a glossary may be needed. So do you think we might need a glossary for ours? I think we do, because there's lots of code names and things, isn't there? There we go. Okay, so, my two favourite words in the universe. Okay, and so, introduction. Whoops. What are we writing about? Why were the D-Day landings successful? So our introduction might only be 2 sentences. My one was really boring, wasn't it? I just said a minute ago. It was a bit boring. What do you think?
They planned it for a few months.
Pardon?
It took them a few months.
It took them a few months to plan, yeah, so we might get some of that kind of information in there.
That it started on June 6th.
Okay, so remember our titles, why were the D-Day landings successful? So do you think we should introduce when they happened?
Yeah.
The D-Day landings. I might include a bit of parenthesis in here. Why might I include a bit of parenthesis? Because we often refer to them as the D-Day landings, but actually we talked how D-Day refers to any day, moving day. 8th of March might be D-Day for schools opening. Can you see? So do you think I might need to be a bit more specific about what these D-Day landings are?
It started on June.
No, I want to know what's the other name for the D-Day landings. I'm going to do that bit in a minute, what you've just said. I want to know, I'm going to use a bracket.
Operation Neptune.
Okay. What do we call the D-Day landings? It's a place in France. Normandy, and it was an invasion, wasn't it? I'm going to use a relative clause as well, which was... I'm going to change that to is. The name given to the, sorry, I've just joined that, Normandy. invasion. Because although they are referred to as the D-Day landings, you know, that is a phrase that can be used for lots of different things. The D-Day landings, which is the name given to the Normandy invasions, occurred rather than happened. 1 hour or 2 hours in occurred?
Yeah, I think it's 2 C's and 2 R's.
I'm going to put 2, but I'm going to do dots under that, so I'm not sure. I think, is it 2 C's, 1 R? Right, well look, but you know when you're writing, if there's a word you don't know, put dots underneath, then we'll come back to it, because we don't need to stop our writing, do we? The D-Day landings, which is the name given to the which are the name given to the Normandy invasion, occurred on 6th of June 1944. They were the turning point in the war, weren't they?
Yeah.
They were, I think it might be invasions. The turning point of, I'm not going to put that, I'm going to put world. Because actually, if you think about it, if I put of the war, if you were reading it having known nothing about what D-Day landings were, you might say, what war? Was it World War I? Was it World War II? You need to be specific, don't you? After you've written World War II once, you could then refer to the war after that. Does that make sense? The D-Day landings, which is the name given to the Normandy invasions, occurred on the 6th of June 1944. They were the turning point of World War II. Now, you could put things like, oh, please read the rest of this to find out why, but that's kind of something we do slightly lower down the school, isn't it? We don't need necessarily to do that now. Do you think this introduces it well enough? That's 2 sentences. That's all your introduction needs to be. We might want to put about, they were the turning point of World War II. We could put on there, use our causal connective, because they were so effective. Because if we're writing about why they were so successful, we could put that into our introduction, couldn't we? So, comma, because they were so successful. Yes, Miss Wakefield. 2 S's, 1 F. Okay, that's it. That's your introduction. I think we built it up into something it didn't need to be, didn't we? Into a big thing. Now, I'm not sure if we're going to get this on camera, but you have been working hard on thinking about why they were successful. We're going to take a photo of this. So if you haven't got it on camera, don't worry about it. We're going to take a photo. So if you do want to stick with the original end task and think about why they were successful, these are the points. And I'm not going to lay claim to this. You did this with Miss Smith, didn't you? Okay, so we've got when they happened and who, why they were successful. So these are the reasons. They had fake airfields, yes? The equipment they used. They practised landing in Scotland. That's the wrong. They practised landing in Scotland. So they had a rehearsal for it. The beaches in Scotland are like the areas ones in France. They tricked the Germans, led them to believe that the Allies were going to attack Calais. It was the largest military operation, sea, air and land. We often only think of the sea, don't we really? Element of surprise. It was planned, it was planned many years in advance, wasn't it? Months of planning. Tide moon. So that's to do with how dark they needed to be, so it could be the element of surprise. Planes, ships, tanks, 6,000 ships, and actually one of those was it 150,000 troops, men, yeah, that took part in it. I know a lot were unfortunately killed. Oh yeah, look there. And then a further 350,000. Phone lines were cut, bridges and railway lines were blown up. So that's it. That's why it was successful. So now all we've got to do is we've got to break that down into paragraphs and expand on it. And does each paragraph need to be 10, 11 sentences? No. I mean, 3 or 4 might be enough, depending obviously how long your sentences are, whether they're complex sentences. If they're just really short sentences, you might need a few more to explain it. But really, 3, 4, 5 maybe per paragraph to explain. Maybe more if it needs more of an explanation, but it's thinking about breaking it down and explaining why. I would also trying to think of them in order, why they're successful in the order they were successful. So you might want to start with, like you say, the practicing, because that's maybe one of the first things they did. Or you might want to start with the planning. They planned it first, then they practiced it, then this happened, then this happened. Does that make sense? Are you feeling a bit more confident about our end task? Yes? I've talked at 150 miles an hour, haven't I?
Yeah.
Yeah. Nothing changes, does it? But yeah, hopefully you've got an idea what to do now. Fantastic.